Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope y'all are doing well tonight. This is another Back to Bible, and I am Shauna Ortiz. And tonight, I had a topic that I wanted to talk with everybody about, and the topic is leadership. And so there have been issues that have kind of popped up that we have been talking about on the team. And just in general, whether you're on a team or whether you're leading some type of a business, I think that this will apply to you, and I think that it will be helpful to you. I think this message will be helpful. A lot of people have joined this business as a distributor, and then within a short amount of time, they find themselves in a leadership position, and so all of a sudden they have made it to the executive level or the Ruby level. And it's one thing to say, okay, I'll be a distributor, I'll sell some products, but not everyone is ready to be in a leadership position so quickly, or at least they think that they're not ready to be in a leadership position so quickly. Some people do come into this business as a business owner, and so it's not really that big of a deal. They just start, building teams underneath them, and they just take off. But some people just joined maybe just to get the products, just to get them at the cheaper rate, and they wanted to get, some free product here and there, and so they really weren't thinking about the aspect as far as having teams and leaders and people underneath them. And so they come to this position and they kind of get stressed or they get fearful. And so this is what I want to talk about tonight. So the first thing that I want to let everyone know is that God's leaders are chosen by God. They're not chosen by man. And so that's one of the very first things that we need to remember. This is something that is repeated throughout the Bible, and I just want to I'm going to give you 3 different examples, but I just want us to really get that concept and understand that we are chosen by God and not by man, okay? So the first part that I'm going to read, it's actually a very lengthy passage. It's out of the Old Testament, and it's from the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 1, verse 1. And in this particular passage, Samuel is a prophet, and he has been told to go to speak to Saul, and Saul is the king at that time. And so I want to go through this whole thing because it really gives us some good information about how God chooses his leaders. So it says here, verse 1, one day God said, Samuel, I've rejected Saul, and I refuse to let him be the king any longer. Stop feeling sad about him, which I want to stop right there and talk about that because I think that's interesting. There's a lot of times where we are trying to hold on to the past, and things have changed, and people have changed, and people have had to leave positions or leave our agency or organization or our team, and we just continue to mourn for the loss of those people, and we're just, oh, but that person left, and they're not working, or they're not doing this, or they're not doing that. And this says, stop feeling sad about him. I'm already done with him. I'm moving on. And so I think that gives us an indication of God doesn't hold on to the past. He's always moving forward. He's always growing. He's always progressing. He's always changing with us. And so that's something that we need to understand. God is always about growth and change. And so we can't stay holding on to that stuff from the past. So anyway, he says, stop feeling sad about him. Put some olive oil in a small container and go visit a man named Jesse who lives in Bethlehem. I've chosen one of his sons to be my king. The other thing that I want to point out right there is he said, my king. That's his leader. He's putting that person into that position of leadership. And so we need to understand that people come to their positions because they have been promoted by God. God puts people in those positions. Again, promotion is growth, and God is always about growth, increase, change. And so this is what he says, because I've chosen one of his sons to be my king. So we move on to verse 6, and it says, when Jesse and his sons arrived, Samuel noticed Jesse's oldest son, Eliab. He has to be the one the Lord has chosen, Samuel said to himself. But the Lord told him, Samuel, don't think Eliab is the one just because he's tall and handsome. He isn't the one I've chosen. People judge others by what they look like, but I judge people by what is in their hearts. This is very clear. So Samuel had that automatic reaction to, oh man, this has got to be him. He looks good. He looks like a king. This has got to be the one that God wants. And God corrected him immediately and said, that's not him. That's not him. Don't judge by the looks. You need to be judging by the heart. So it says, Jesse told his son Abinadab to go over to Samuel. But Samuel said, no, the Lord hasn't chosen him. Next, Jesse sent his son Shammah to him. And Samuel said, the Lord hasn't chosen him either. One by one, Jesse told all 7 of his sons to go over to Samuel. Finally, Samuel said, Jesse, the Lord hasn't chosen any of these young men. Do you have any other sons? Yes, Jesse answered. My youngest son David is out taking care of the sheep. So this right here tells you, why didn't Jesse have all of his sons there? If he knew Samuel was coming to do this and he knew he was going to present this lineup, why didn't he have them all there? Because his opinion of David was so low, or he just thought he wasn't worthy, he was too young. And this is another thing for us to understand. That's his own father. That should be the person supporting all of the children. Okay, kids, it's got to be one of y'all. Let's go out there. Let's see who it's going to be. But even sometimes we're going to have that person in our family that's going to come around and say, you know, oh, this one's not really worthy. Are you sure you're worthy of that? And so this is basically what was happening. He said, well, I just have my youngest son. That's the only one that's left. He's out there taking care of the sheep. And so immediately Samuel says, send for him. We won't start the ceremony until he gets here. Jesse sent for David. He was a healthy, good-looking boy with a sparkle in his eyes. As soon as David came, the Lord told Samuel, he's the one. Get up and pour the olive oil on his head. Samuel poured the oil on David's head while his brothers watched. You know, that had to have been an issue because the brothers are there. They've all been told, nope, 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 nope. All 7 of you, it's none of you. It's this youngest son who nobody really believes is worthy of this position. And there he pours this oil over his head and anoints him to be the next king in front of the brothers as the brothers watch. And it says at that moment, the Spirit of the Lord took control of David and stayed with him from then on. Samuel returned home to Ramah. Okay, so basically that whole situation is that, you know, there was going to be this lineup. Let's figure out who it is. And, you know, it ends up not being who all the people thought it was going to be. It's who God chose. And why did God choose David? He was not qualified. He did not look like a king. He was not the most handsome, the tallest, the strongest. He was not even necessarily the most intelligent. And he was not even without sin, because later on we find out about all these things that David ends up doing that are sin. So it wasn't even this sin-free person that he was going for. So it's just, it kind of makes you wonder, what was it? What was it that God was seeing in David that the other people didn't see? So I want to go a little bit further into who David was and kind of get a picture of that. So in the next, in another chapter further down, it's 1 Samuel 17, verse 26. David is, now he's trying to figure out what's going on with the nearby town or whatever. And it says, David asked some soldiers standing nearby, what will a man get for killing this Philistine and stopping him from insulting our people? What does that worthless Philistine think he is? Or who does that worthless Philistine think he is? He's making fun of the army of the living God. And so the soldiers told David what the king would give the man who killed Goliath. So this is now the story of David and Goliath. So it says David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard him talking with the soldiers. And Eliab was angry with him and said, what are you doing here anyway? Who's taking care of your little flock of sheep out in the desert? So here he is mocking him again, trying to make him feel worthless, trying to put him down, trying to make him, you know, you're nothing. Would you just go, get out of here? What are you even doing here? Now remember though, this brother, along with all the other brothers, watched David get anointed as the next king right there in front of him. And obviously they're just like, whatever, that was just a thing and we're going to move on and you're still the dumb little brother that we don't respect. And so here he is saying, what are you even doing here? And so then he says, you spoiled brat, you came here just to watch the fighting, didn't you? So then David says, what have I done? David answers, can't I even ask a question? And so you can see that sibling rivalry there. You can see that, they obviously don't have a super close relationship. It's just this, negativity between the brothers. And so it says that then he turned and asked another soldier the same thing that he had asked the others, and he got the same answer. So some soldiers overheard David talking, so they told Saul, which again, he was king at that time, they told Saul what David had said. And Saul sent for David, and David came. Your Majesty, he said, this Philistine shouldn't turn us into cowards. I'll go out and I'll fight him myself. So the king is curious. He wants to know, who is it that's got this courage that's talking against Goliath, this giant? And when he sees him, he says, you don't have a chance against him, Saul tells him. You're only a boy, and he's been a soldier all his life. But David told him, Your Majesty, I take care of my father's sheep, and when one of them is dragged off by a lion or a bear, I go after it and I beat the wild animal until it lets the sheep go. If the wild animal turns and attacks me, I grab it by the throat and I kill it. Sir, I have killed lions and bears that way, and I can kill this worthless Philistine. He shouldn't have made fun of the army of the living God. The Lord has rescued me from the claws of lions and bears, and he will keep me safe from the hands of this Philistine. So this is the faith that he has. If I can kill a lion and I can kill a bear, and my God is with me when I'm doing that, then I can kill this guy. I can kill that. So all these, experienced soldiers are standing up there, super cowardly, very scared of this giant, saying we can't do anything. But this little boy who has all this faith says, I can do it. I can do it. I know I can do it. I've got my God behind me, and I know I can do it. And so at that point, Saul says, all right, go for it. Go ahead and fight him. And I hope the Lord will help you. And so basically he's like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but good luck with that. I hope you can do it. So then he goes through this whole scenario of where Saul tries to get him to wear his armor and stuff like that. And he tries it on, and then he's like, no, I can't do this, king. It's not my armor. I'm not prepared for it. This is just not me. This is not how I usually do things. And so it says that David goes back and he picks up his shepherd's stick. So he's like, this is basically what I have. I have my shepherd's stick. And he went out to a stream and he picked up 5 smooth rocks and he put them in his leather bag. And then with his sling in his hand, he went straight toward Goliath. Goliath came toward David, walking behind the soldier who was carrying his shield. And when Goliath saw that David was just a healthy, good-looking boy, he made fun of him. Do you think that I'm a dog? Goliath asked. Is that why you've come after me with a stick? He cursed David in the name of the Philistine gods and shouted, come on, when I'm finished with you, I'll feed you to the birds and to the wild animals. And David answered, you've come out to fight me with a sword and a spear and a dagger, but I've come out to fight you in the name of the Lord all-powerful. And so he's telling him, I don't need anything but the Lord behind me. That's all I need. You come out here with all your, you're this huge giant, you're this, you're that, and I'm just going to come with me. That's it. And with God behind me. And so it says, but I come in the name of the Lord all-powerful. He is the God of Israel's army, and you have insulted him too. So he is standing up for God. This is the kind of person that he is. He doesn't have the experience that other people have. He doesn't have education. He's just a child. He's a youth. And yet he has the faith of God, and he is protective of God. And so he says, he is the God of Israel's army, and you have insulted him too. Today the Lord will help me defeat you. I'll knock you down and cut off your head, and I'll feed the bodies of the other Philistine soldiers to the birds and the wild animals. And then the whole world will know that Israel has a real God. Everybody here will see that the Lord doesn't need swords or spears to save his people. The Lord always wins his battles, and he will help us defeat you. And when Goliath started forward, David ran toward him. He put a rock in his sling and swung the sling around it by its straps. When he let go of one strap, the rock flew out and hit Goliath on the forehead. It cracked his skull, and he fell face down on the ground. David defeated Goliath with a sling and a rock. He killed him without even using a sword. David ran over and pulled out Goliath's sword. Then he used it to cut off Goliath's head. When the Philistines saw what had happened to their hero, they started running away. And so that whole scenario shows you, how is David a leader? How did God pick him? Because look at that little guy. He's got courage. He's brave. He went out there when nobody else would, because he said, all I need is God. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. If I can kill these lions and bears, I can kill this guy. God's going to be with me to be able to do it. And so, again, what kind of leader was he? He was brave. He was not experienced. He didn't have everything else the other ones had, but he was brave. He was full of faith in God, and his heart was in the right place. He wanted to protect God, and he knew that that was the right thing to do. So he didn't know how to use armor. He didn't even want to use armor. He didn't have the skills. He didn't have any of that other stuff. So we need to look at that. What does God need from us to be a good leader? He doesn't need us to have a certain type of skill. He doesn't need us to have a certain education. He doesn't need us to have a certain type of experience. We don't have to come from a certain background. We don't have to have money. We don't have to have any of that stuff. Basically, when God picks us and he promotes us, he takes us as is. There's no warranties. He just says, I know what all her past is. I know what all of his past is. I know what they've done or haven't done. I know what their skill level is. I'm taking them like that because they have the right heart and it's in the right place. And everything else can be taught. Everything else, they can ask for wisdom and I'll give them wisdom, and we can teach everything else, but the heart has to be right. And so it does say in the Bible, if we ask for wisdom, that he'll give us wisdom. So that's something that we do need to keep doing as a leader. We need to always pray for wisdom. And if we ask, we shall receive. And so that's something that we have to remember as well. And, you know, the thing that God is having us do here as leaders, we have to remember is that he's leading us to help our customers get to health, to help our leaders get other customers to health. And so we have all these, you know, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, but I guess we have these like not options, but I guess abilities that we may think are not really helpful, but they are, because it's all that we need. God has qualified us. We don't need the human qualifications. God has said, that's enough right there. That's enough qualifications, and we need to stop worrying about the rest of it. Because when we worry about those other things and we say, well, that person's educated and that person is this, when we start thinking about all those other things, that's when we look at it and we say, oh my goodness, they're qualified to do this, they're qualified to do that, they have this education, they have this, I don't have any of that. And so when we look at that, it looks like, you know, we're not at that certain level. We start comparing, and I've talked about that before too. Don't compare your journey to someone else's journey. Don't compare my diamond leadership to someone else's diamond leadership. It's not going to look the same. I'm not doing the same thing that Keisha's doing. I'm not doing the same thing that Alicia's doing. You know, there's other, you know, other people that are on the team. I'm not doing those things. I'm doing what God's telling me to do, and I'm at this certain level of leadership. And in fact, a lot of what I'm doing is these Back to Bibles. And even though, you know I could be doing more training, I could be doing more of this, more of that, I'm not doing those things. So I want that to be something that kind of sinks in with you again. Don't go back to that comparison of I'm not doing this or they're doing something more than I'm doing. Okay. Because that just goes back to trying to stick to human standards, and we don't need to be at human standards. God already said that we were qualified. So if God has promoted us and he believes in us, then why can't we believe in ourselves? That's what we have to be able to look at. We have to be able to say, okay, he believes in us. You know, we are capable, apparently, to do whatever he needs us to do. Again, we don't know what that is. We got promoted to Emerald, and we don't even know what it means to be an Emerald. We don't even know what we need to do at that level. But again, he's put us here, so we have to believe that we're here for a reason and that we can handle those tasks at that level. We need to have the faith that God has in us, because he has faith in us. Okay, so I wanted to give another example, and this one is from Nehemiah, and really it just kind of covers the whole book of Nehemiah. So if you want to read into it or whatever, there's not just a scripture, it's just a kind of a summary of the book of Nehemiah. So Nehemiah was a cupbearer for the king, and basically what that job was is that he would have to taste the wine every day that was coming into the king. And basically he just needed to see, is it going to be okay for the king, or is it poisoned? And so his whole job was to take a drink, and if he didn't die, then he could pass on the wine to the king. It was a terrible job. It was a very dangerous job, but that's what he had. And so that particular job, though, put him in front of the king. And so this is where all this gets tied in, because there weren't, not just anybody could just go before the king every day, but because of his job, he was able to go before the king. And so he goes before the king one day, and as he's there, the king asks him, what's going on with you? In all your years that you've done this job, I've never seen you like this. You look like you're depressed or something. What's going on? And so at that point, he takes that opportunity, and Nehemiah takes that opportunity to tell him that God had put this desire down in his heart to actually do some, he had a mission basically to go and rebuild the walls of the temple. And so it says, part of what it's saying there is that he had this relationship with the king, and so all these doors were opened up to him. So when the king says, okay, you want to rebuild, what do you need? Do you need materials? Do you need workers? What is it that you're needing? And so sometimes we're placed in these positions and we don't even understand why, but it's to get us in front of people so that we can do something that God needs us to do. And so for Nehemiah, it was to build this wall, but he was able to accomplish that because he went before the king. He told him what he needed. Well, I need documents. I need, if you can write me something to tell the other, leaders around that, hey, by the way, he's going to be over there doing that, support him and let him do what he's going to be doing. And again, just all these doors just opened up because he had this particular position. And so again, it says, just because he had that relationship with the king, he had favor and he was able to get all this stuff done. So he quickly started gathering and organizing the families, and they went out and they started doing this construction. And I think what's interesting is that he didn't have any experience doing this. He had never been a project manager anywhere. This had never been an issue. And so all of a sudden he goes from king, cupbearer to the king to he's project manager of rebuilding this whole thing. He had all of this negativity. People were telling him, what are you doing? You don't even know how to do this. You're never going to be able to do this. It's going to take years to do this. And yet that was not the case. He was able to organize it. He was able to get the whole thing done. And so he prayed. It says he prayed. He had God's favor. He believed that he could do it. And he was steadfast. He was faithful. And he got that project done. And even after this project was completed, he continued on as governor. And so that's another thing just that I wanted to throw in there, because he even completed that specific project, but he was then given a new project, another task. And so a lot of times, we think, I just mastered this one certain thing at this level of leadership. And now here we go, I'm doing something else now. Now I'm moving on and I'm having to do these other things. New leadership challenges are going to emerge, and we must continue. God has us here for a reason. We're in front of these people for a reason, and we need to figure out what that is. And so, as we continue to move up, we have to figure out, why am I a diamond leader? Why am I a triple diamond? Why am I, who am I in front of? Who do I need to talk to? What is my purpose of being in this, certain position? Okay, so the last one that I want to conclude with is from Esther, and Esther is one of my favorites. And again, this is the whole book of Esther, so I'm not going to just quote one scripture. But basically the deal with Esther was that she was just a regular girl, and there was an issue where the king in that town or in that area had gotten rid of the queen. There was an issue between them, and so he starts looking for a new queen, and she ends up being chosen as the new queen. So again, she's just a regular girl, and she becomes the queen. And so she finds herself in this leadership position. She had not planned on it. She did not feel she was experienced. She did not feel, that she came from the right background. It was just all of a sudden she's been promoted into this queen position. And so she never planned on this. And it was this, it just really was this big deal for her to find herself in this position. Okay, so it said that her Jewish people came to her and they told her, you are a Jew. Don't forget that, this is your heritage. This is your background. And so since she came in, that they told her, you're in this position for a certain reason. You need to understand that, this is your background. This is your heritage. You need to help us out. And so she was saying, I don't even know, I don't even know how to be queen. I don't even know how to do this stuff. There's no way that I can help. I don't even know what to do. And finally her cousin comes to her and says, who knows, maybe it was for such a time as this that you were promoted in the kingdom. And so that's one of my favorite scriptures for a lot of different reasons. But, basically he's telling her, the only reason you're probably in this position is for this, to help us, to help our nation, to help our people. And so, I guess that finally clicks with her, and she's like, wow, maybe that is why I'm a queen. I don't know why I'm a queen. I have no idea why, God made me a queen, but maybe it is, to save my people. And so it says she started praying and she started fasting, and she had her servants pray and fast, and they started doing all this stuff. And she then becomes, or she does what she needs to do to help out her nation. And so I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to say, perhaps God has placed us in these leadership roles, whether we're an executive or all the way up to Ambassador Diamond, but to accomplish some goal that he has for us. as he may not, he may not be just promoting us to the next level to make more money. You know, sometimes we think about it, well, it's for the promotion and for the title and for the money, and maybe it's not for that. You know, those things are not bad, that's fine, but maybe it's for something else. Maybe he has us here to do something else. Maybe there's another mission, another purpose that we're supposed to serve. And so I want you to think about that, and I just challenge you to figure out, what is that role? What does he have for us? And instead of thinking, you know, I can't do this, I'm not qualified, you are. God says that you are. He promoted you. He got you to that position. So let's figure out what he wants you to do there. And that's all I got to say about that.
I knew you were going to end it like that, Shauna. I absolutely love talks about leadership, and of course the book of Esther, or just that verse, because very comically, I didn't know that was a verse from the Bible. I wasn't reading the Bible very diligently, and I remember, I think you sent me a graphic with it, or you said it, and I said, oh my gosh, that's a mantra that we have and it works. And you're like, no, that's actually in the book of Esther in the Bible. And I love it because I think a lot of people do think that they have to be a certain position or make a certain amount of money to be influential. And something that I've learned, because I don't read the Bible very much, but something that you've taught me is that Jesus only had 12 followers. Is that right? Or he didn't have many. He had 12 apostles. And, you know, other people had so many, but he had so much influence. And whoever's watching this, I just want to say that, you know, it doesn't matter the position that you have, but it definitely matters the influence that you can have, because our job is very simple, and it's to help people, period. The only people that are successful, and it works if you really pay attention to the people that are in obvious leadership roles. Let's just say the ambassadors, presidentials. They help people. They have so many stories. I'm sure a few have snuck in there. I'm sure of it. But for the most part, in our company, it's full of integrity. It's full of great leaders. It's full of people that believe in Jesus and that we're supposed to give back. And so I love what you talked about tonight, because every single one of us, they keep telling us, you know, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. And it's sometimes, believe it or not, I struggle with when people say stay in your lane, because I've always colored outside of the lines, you know, and I try different things, but that's not what it means. You know, God has given you a job, and God is telling you to do something. He's telling you to rise up for something in particular. And if you don't do that, I think you're falling short of why you're really here. Is that right? Am I on the right road? Yeah. So whenever I am telling people you have to stay in your lane, it's because you have to really hone in on what God is calling you to do. And being a leader is not about a title, that's for sure. It's about what's inside your heart. So anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for what you give to us, and I will definitely put this out there, and I want to encourage everyone to pass this information around to your teams and whoever might need this, and we look forward to giving you our next message. Thank you, Shauna, so much. Good night.
Bye-bye.